Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another train simulator video. Today I've got a kind of a technical video for you. As you probably know if you follow my channel, I've been pretty frustrated by train simulators graphic performance with the 1070 and even the 970 when I had that before. Trying to get to the bottom of what exactly is the perfect setting for a train simulator. Every game that you play has an optimum setting for the graphics card that you have. So I started to look at this and found that with some routes, like the North Jersey Coast route, if I had the settings set at the highest setting, okay, which is basically everything pegged, and then like a mid-range SSAA anti-aliasing setting, along with the highest ultra settings, just trying to figure out, where the best piece is. And when I set this up for North Jersey coastline, I could barely get above 30 frames per second. But on other routes, the frame rates were different. So what I'm going to do in this experiment, I'm going to leave this setting exactly as you see here. That's going to be the standard across this test, all right? So I'm going to use different routes to show you the frame rates. So this is my, I'm using MSI to measure this. So I've got a EVGA GTX 1070 superclock card running. Okay, so it's a kind of a dynamic card, and it'll clock up as it needs to. Okay, it's got 8 gig of RAM on it, and this is the frame rate setting right here. Then I've got a i7-6700 CPU, and this is memory down here and all the way to the bottom, so you can see what memory is being used. So let's start out with this scenario, this route here. We're going to do quick drive scenarios, and I'm just going to show you the difference in frame rates. So let's check this one out first. So now the Northeast Corridor route has been around since I think 2012. I don't think they even sell it anymore because of issues, but I still have it. And you can see here frame rates are in the 90s, okay, sitting still. And as I go outside the cabin, you can see they get to 85. We're very acceptable, okay. I mean, the graphic quality on this route isn't fantastic, but very acceptable playing rates. Anti-aliasing's pretty damn good. Okay, I'm very happy. I'm using 95% on the card, the GPU, okay, and if I go by here, I can actually get over 100 frames per second, getting up to 112 as the scenery's going by fast over there, and then 90s, high 90s there, and as I look forward straight here, I'm getting in the high 90s. Go outside here, getting 80 in the high 80s. All very acceptable gameplay, okay? So I think we can conclude that the Northeast Corridor route functions fine with my new 1070 card. Right, so let's take a look at a different route. So now we're going to do the, well, let me go with the Baldwin, and we'll go with a newer route. This route just came out this year. This is the, let me get to it, sorry. This is the narrow gauge, the Clear Creek, okay? So we'll go from Black Beaver Brook to Golden, okay? So let's check this one out. Okay, remember, same graphic settings, everything's the same, okay? Now I'm going to get this thing going a little bit so the frames start moving. Now I'm in the high 50s, getting above 60 there. Perfectly acceptable. Now there's much more graphic detail on this route, so I expect it to be lower than the Northeast Corridor. But totally acceptable in the 60s. For me, I mean, I'm running 1080p, 60 frames per second. '69, all right, definitely in the 60s, in the 70s even. Get into the cabin here. Let's see things passing by at 77, 79, 78. Very acceptable, right? Totally acceptable. But lower than the other one. All right, maybe it's because there's more graphic detail. Okay, I'll give you that. So I think you get the idea. So let's switch to another route now. Let's go with the, let's just see. Let's go with the, this guy on the Pacific Surfer route. Where the hell is it? Yeah, the Surfliner. Okay, and we'll go for Los Angeles to Fullerton, okay? Let's check this one out. Alright, so again, graphic settings are the same. Okay, we're in the 50s. That's perfectly acceptable. Perfectly acceptable. High 50s. I'm happy with that. But definitely lower than the other two. Why? Why is it lower than the other two? Is the scenery, it's because of scenery density? I don't know. Why is it lower than the other two? I mean, if I go into here, this isn't much different than Northeast Corridor. Why is it half the frame rate of Northeast Corridor? Why? Why when I look here, is it half the frame, almost half the frame rate of the Northeast Corridor line routes? Now, okay, maybe this is more detailed. I'll give it that. But half the frame rate? I don't know. Then I get down into the 20s here. So I'm never going above 60. Okay. But, I mean, I would still call this acceptable. Not optimal, because with this card, it should be cranking. But I would call this acceptable. Okay? Then we get into 68, 67. We're going a little higher, but still nowhere near Northeast Corridor. And that, let's say that's because Northeast Corridor isn't as dense from a graphics perspective. Okay, let's give that the benefit of the doubt. Okay, but still, I'm pretty happy with these. You know, I could live with this. I could play the game at these frame rates. All right. So that's the Surfliner. So let's check out another route. So now let's do the Germany. Okay, and we'll get the ICM3 going. We'll go from whatever that is to here. Okay, we'll just try that. All right, so now we're in Germany. We're on the ICM3. Okay. So look at the frame rates. Just the standing frame rates are 24, 28, under 20. Okay. Interesting. So let's power this up and see how we do here. 24, 23. There's a lot of detail here with these lines. Okay, but 24, 23? Why? Why? Why is it a quarter of the Northeast Corridor line? Why is it 25% of the Northeast Corridor line? And half of the other ones? Why is that? I don't understand. And why is it using only 35% of the GPU? Where the other ones were in the 70s and 80s and 90s. Go outside here, it's 26%. Or sorry, 26 frames per second. 22 frames per second. 23 frames per second. Why? Is it because of all the wires? I don't know. Let's see. 19 frames per second. Why is that? 32. Okay, now we're getting to 32. We're starting to use more of the GPU as we go faster. I guess that explains things. We're getting into 40. 41. If I look on the side here. Alright, I get up into 56, 57. Okay, so I guess that makes sense. It's because when the train's moving slower, the software doesn't deliver as many frames, I guess. I don't know. 42, but still it's different than the other routes, right? 42, 44. Now we're back outside. We're down to 26. Now we're at 50. Okay. So actually, as the train starts to go faster, it becomes more acceptable. But why at the slower speeds are the frame rates so slow? I don't understand that. Why do you get the jaggedy play at slower speeds? It doesn't really make much sense to me. So we're at 41, which I guess is acceptable, but not totally, and you're getting stuttering. So okay, so that's this route, right? Different. Again, this is the same game, and we're just looking at different routes. You can see right there, that's stuttering right there. So let's go to a different route now. Let's do a freight train route here. Let's go to Sherman Hill. Okay. Or Stevens Pass. Okay, that's pretty new. Fairly new, not real new. But let's try Stevens Pass. Okay, Stevens Pass. Sitting still, we got a frame rate of 18 frames per second. Okay? And some interesting flickering in the foreground there. Now I'm going to speed here, so whatever. "17 frames per second. You can see it jittering along. Why is it running at 17 frames per second? I mean, it should be, if it's so slow, it should be like 100 frames per second. 18 frames per second. And the GPU is 31% used. 34% used. So as we increase speed, the frames rates goes up a little bit. Right now we're at 31. Okay, so we're increasing speed and we're increasing frame rate. Now there's much less graphic detail here, okay? And we're at 28, 29. We get up, when things are passing by a little quicker, we're getting up into the 50s, okay? I guess maybe the software is designed, there's nice stuttering right there. I guess maybe the software is designed only to run at lower frame rates if you're moving slower? I guess? I don't know. We get up into the 50s here when we're looking out the side window. When we're looking at the front, 30s. Are we getting into the 50s as we're moving faster? Okay. But still nowhere near 60. I mean, right here I should be 60 frames per second, right? No? Am I wrong? I don't know. Now I'm going to come into like open area here where there's less graphics, less detail, I should say. We're still in the high 40s, but definitely there's some interesting stuttering right there. And you can see the card's not used. It's at 46%. I mean, why wouldn't you be using the card to its maximum to max out the frame rates? I don't know. Here we're at 24. Now things are moving by pretty quick here. But we're only doing 25 frames per second. 31. Alright, so I think you get the idea, okay? So now let's shift to another one now. Again, we're demonstrating the difference in frame rates between different layout or routes. Alright, so I want to show you, let's go to a newer one here. The Shanghai, the MagLev. Alright, we'll do this, run this one. Alright, so here we go. Now, sitting frame rate's at 66 frames per second. The other one was 29 frames per second. Why is that? Why is that? If I go outside here, I'm at 67, 74, 80 frames per second sitting still. Why is Sherman Hill at 29 frames per second sitting still? I don't get it. I just don't get it. We're never going below 60. I know this is a newer route, okay? I mean, this is totally acceptable. Totally acceptable. But a real dilemma as to why slow speeds here were at 70 frames per second, but the other Sherman Hill, or not Sherman Hill, forget whatever the other one was, the freight one that we were looking at. When we were going this slow, we were at 18, 20, 22, 29, and look, plenty of detail here. I mean, there's plenty of graphic detail here. But why the difference in frame rates between routes? Anybody know the answer? I sure don't know the answer. Let's speed it up here a little bit. We're in the 70s. I mean, totally acceptable, right? '81. Never got to this with the freight route. Sherman Hill, I think it is, right? Whatever it was. '81. '72 frames per second. All right, inside the cab, 75 frames per second. At this speed and the other one, you never got there. Okay, so that's this example. Let's look at a final example, and you'll see the point I'm trying to prove here. So we're going to go with the DLP, that one, and we're going to go with the... It was Stevens Pass before, sorry, Stevens Pass. And we're going to go with North Jersey Coast. Where is it? Okay, fairly new scenario, okay? We'll go raw way to Woodbridge, all right? Start. Same graphic settings. Okay, we got it to work here. North Jersey coastline, sitting frame rate, 25 frames per second. Outside the platform, it's about the same thing. Okay? Haven't changed anything. I mean, when I was going this slow with the MagLev, I had 70 frames per second. Okay, when I looked to the side here, I had 80 frames per second. I've never gotten above 40. Is it because of the route? We're not overutilizing the graphics card. I don't know. It's got to be route. It's got to be the route. To me, it's got to be the route. If someone has an answer, I'd love to hear the answer, because what I'm basically concluding is that you can't have one graphics setting for all the routes in Train Simulator. You have to basically tweak the graphics settings for every individual route. So, for example, for this route, if I wanted to run at higher frame rates, I'd have to lower the graphic detail, I think. Okay? Here I'm getting up into 36 now, but I'm still nowhere near 60. Nowhere near 60, and I'm going faster than I was in the MagLev. And the MagLev, when the graphics were moving this fast, I was in the 70s. And there's just as much graphic detail here as there was in the MagLev. Maybe a little bit more here. Give it the benefit of the doubt, all right? But here, there's definitely about the same. And it's running at, you know, at least, let's just call it half the frame rate. I mean, here if I look to the side, I've got this one thing moving, so I get up to 40. I mean, this should be like 100. Okay? So that's North Jersey coastline. All right, so that's my experiment. And what's the conclusion? I mean, the conclusion to me is that one graphics setting in Train Simulator 2016, the highest graphics setting, I'll show you again. Okay. This highest graphics setting does not produce the same frame rate for every route that you play in this game. Some routes are really high and some routes are really low, and it's so varied that you can't really rely on one graphics setting for this game. You have to basically tweak it by the route. I would just like to be able to have a consistent graphic experience with a game that I've spent a lot of money on and I really like, and not be frustrated by low frame rates and stuttering in the game. Anyway, so I hope this is helpful. It's probably something that a lot of you who play Train Simulator already realize, but don't let anybody tell you that you can throw GPU or CPU hardware at this frame rate issue in Train Simulator. Because I have a pretty hefty system here, and when I went from a 970 to a 1070, I saw virtually no improvement in frame rate. And North Jersey coastline is a newer route, and it does not function anywhere near Clear Creek or the Maglev. So that's the testing. It wasn't really eye-opening for me. I kind of knew this, playing the different routes and experiencing the different frame rates. But here's the rub. I advise you not to spend hours trying to find the optimal graphics setting for Train Simulator 2016. Spend your time writing Dovetail games to ask them to improve the graphics engine within the game. And don't think for a second that taking advantage of 2016 GPU technology is going to correct this issue. Only Dovetail can correct it. Thanks for watching and have a great day.